So first of all, welcome all of you. Thank you for coming to the Avalanche Summit. I hope you have been having as much fun as I have. It's been great to see everybody live and in person instead of on Zoom. Why don't we have our panelists introduce themselves? Indira, would you like to go first?
Sí, muchas gracias.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much. I'm going to be speaking in Spanish. I'm a senator in Mexico, and I've been working these last 3 years, first of all, in defending the technological community in my country, and right now in putting forward a Bitcoin law.
Thank you very much. My name is José Rodriguez. I'm also from Mexico. This is my 10th year now in Bitcoin, blockchain, and in this space, and I've had various startups, communities, and events done in this last 10 years. And in this also last year, mostly, I have been working with Senator Indira and different governments to see also how we can implement and bring more companies, investment, and people into this community and get it out of this dark places that in some countries regulators put crypto, blockchain, and the Bitcoin space. And well, also I run Jalisco Talentland, in which Avalanche has also participated. It's the biggest event in Latin America. We had 62,000 people in 2019. This year we're going to have it in July, so I hope all of you can come. It's going to be for 25,000 people, and hope to see you there in Mexico.
Hi, I am Quirze Salomó. I am the CEO of the Center Blockchain of Catalonia. The Center Blockchain is created and supported by the Chamber of Commerce of Barcelona and the Government of Catalonia. And our mission is that Catalonia adopts massively the blockchain. It then is massive adoption, our mission. We work for that. And we have different strategies for this adoption. We will talk about them during this panel.
Thank you all. As somebody who's been working a lot on policy and blockchain, I speak with a lot of lawmakers and regulators. What are some of the key priorities that you all think are important for governments with regard to crypto and blockchain?
Okay, well, first of all, I have to say that this vision of regulation within a state that has been used to controlling and restricting and closing the door to innovation and creativity, all this has to change. And because of this, what I say is the system has to be blockchain. And it's a political positioning in order to understand that all these initiatives that we can actually work on within the government have to have, first of all, a non-restrictive standpoint, and rather the contrary, it has to be flexible. Laws cannot be the last, the legal system cannot be the last to find out what's happening. So if the industry is there, all we have to do is adapt to this industry, to what exists already. And because of this, for me, right now, what's most important, especially in Latin America, in countries such as Mexico, where there is so much inequality, what we have to do is share the same vision. If this vision is not the same, then what's going to happen is that regulation, excessive regulation, is going to be working into corruption and deterioration. We know this, it happens everywhere in the world. So what we should do first and foremost is see the regulation not as something that's impossible to reach, and most especially understand that one has to see things on the basis of incentives and not punishment, and to have the door open towards innovation and technology and all the developments that furthermore generate an important community of entrepreneurs, technologists, and this enables economic and social development of all countries.
So something very important for me, was to get to know regulators. For example, when I started was with Mexican Central Bank, and this was because before that I worked for financial institutions, and I saw that you had to have regulator at least know and on board of what we were doing. Why? Because there's a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of lack of education. So normally politicians and people in government just see the headlines, and at that time it was all about Silk Road, illegal stuff, money laundering, like it is right now, but now it has been displaced because there are so many other use cases. So one for me was opening these channels of communications, because I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of regulators. I had companies shut down in Latin America, in Argentina, companies being harassed in various countries. And on the other side, I, for example, worked with regulators with Central Bank in Mexico. I've worked with central banks in Central America. I've lived the last year in El Salvador, and it's having this openness to get to know, yeah, it's a new system, it's a different system. There will be some things in monetary and information that you won't have a complete control, but also what is your objective? Controlling population and getting to know everything that they're doing, and also having this weapons to harass, or helping with the inclusion of financial services. Mexico, El Salvador, Latin America have between 50 to 80% of people that do not have access to financial services. Most people all their life have no access to financial services, and these are tools that can help accelerate and bring people to help with their social and economic development. We've seen it with El Salvador. There are a lot of things that can be done better, but it was done in a record time. And on the other side, right now, you have more people with a Chivo wallet than with banking accounts. In Mexico, for example, you have over 2 million users in different exchanges like Bitso, and that's like 4 times all the stockbrokers together. So despite having all these big institutions and having a government and having central banks, they're not getting to the wide population and servicing them. They're just having the same participant, which perpetuates this poverty and underdevelopment.
Well, here in Barcelona, in Catalonia, we are in an environment, let's say, with a lot of different administrations working in this space. We have the Europeans setting up infrastructure, EBCI, for digital identity. But at the same time, we have the Spanish government that has banned the self-identity using blockchain, because they are afraid that, and scared that the Catalans will use this self-identity for other things that they don't like, no? That question, it takes me that the politicians, not only the Spanish politicians, but all around, they don't understand the technology, they don't understand the decentralization, because you cannot ban the self-sovereign identity. It's impossible to ban. And then they ban questions that are not possible to ban. That means that they don't understand the technology. And I think that is our obligation, our due, to evangelize technologically all the politicians.
One of the big themes that I like to talk about is the inclusion that blockchain brings. How anybody with a computer and internet access can participate. Are you all seeing lots of efforts around inclusion with blockchain?
Well, I have to be very honest. In Mexico and Latin America, well, there's some lags in the infrastructure regarding the internet, electricity, and also an educational community that allows for the accelerated learning, especially among children, for them to grow up surrounded by technology, where the incentive is there for them to even study engineering or to become technological entrepreneurs. So frankly, it's very difficult to prepare and to close that breach. But in any case, there are some myths going on because people think that in Mexico, for example, people don't have access to these services when in fact 80% of the population has access to a cell phone, internet, and to the use of these technologies. So what is the next step? That is why we insist in that there should not be a view of forbidding, but rather incentives, to give incentives for this digital community to grow, for financial inclusion to be a reality in countries such as ours in Latin America. And we want to make sure that this projects us to a future of economic and social development. If things are seen from this standpoint, there's going to be a guarantee regarding these rights, so that people, in fact, can be included in these governmental plans, but most especially for people to be those who benefit from these public policies and these programs. However, if the politicians, it's not so much that they don't understand technology, there I differ somewhat, because technology, I think, now is so accelerated, it's difficult to keep up, but rather politicians don't have the will to see the world in a more comprehensive global way, in which people are using their intelligence to generate alternatives, precisely because of a system which has made it compulsory for us to centralize decisions and to monopolize power and not to allow inclusion to happen. So what is it that we have to do? Well, we have to educate, we have to be self-taught, and most especially demand the politicians to respond to the real needs of these communities, because the needs are there. It's not fantasy in Latin America. I mean, when we talk about technology, you have to think we're talking about science fiction films where the future is represented by computers and rockets and going to the moon, when in fact this is not the case at all. So if we want that inclusion, that justice, and that financial freedom, what we have to do nowadays is demand this as a right. And that's the reason why, as a senator, I believe it's so important that Mexico and our constitution includes the rights for every Mexican upon birth to demand these rights, because politicians are not going to be giving this for free. And it's very difficult that we learn as time goes on if something is not done. We need to know that people have this right to the internet, they have this right to digital education, and they have the right to create companies that have to do with technology. And of course, they have the right as well to decentralization for financial and economic decisions.
I think it's very important that now that everyone's trying to regulate and speak about this, do something adequate according to population. Right now, most of the rules and regulations are based on trying to create Bitcoin and blockchain and crypto and everything companies, like if there were banks, for example. Not all the use cases are monetary use cases or for money. And if you start regulating with all these rules, you're going to see what is happening right now in some countries. You're excluding, again, the population that historically has not had access to these services. They talk a lot about banking and being unbanked. The solution are not banks. Banks have failed in most of Latin America and most in the world, bringing financial services to the world. And when you speak about money laundering on the other side, and you see that you have all this unfair and overhead and great costs in new fintech and blockchain and Bitcoin and et cetera companies that are interacting with crypto, that you want them to be regulated as banks because you want to supposedly prevent money laundering. And on the other side, you see trillions of dollars every year being laundered by banks and have no accounting, no one goes to jail, nothing happens. And on the other side, you have only like 2-3% of that supposedly being laundered by individuals, and you have them sent to jail. Well, there are some unfair rules and regulations that are happening over there. For example, in Mexico, that's what I've told the regulators. If you're really bothered by money laundering, you shouldn't be harassing Bitcoin and blockchain and crypto companies and fintech companies. What you should be doing is canceling the licenses of all those banks that have laundered money and have publicly been fined for doing that we don't want bad actors also in this place. We could be harmed by all these crimes. Of course, we don't want those participants inside the space. We have the same objectives, only that the incorrect ruling and the incorrect path is giving. Why? Because you create all these rules and regulations for people to open their accounts, for example, in a crypto exchange, and you are asking there for even more documentation than opening a bank account. So you are defeating this purpose that you don't need, for example, all this documentation. You don't need all going to a teller, to a branch, etc., to open and have access to financial services. So as Indira said, most people have access to a mobile phone, but don't have access to a bank. Well, what needs to be constructed is all these invisible solutions that probably most of them are going to have blockchain running behind them, but that are giving user-friendly financial services like what we're seeing right now being created.
Yeah, I think all we have been talking now is quite related. I am not so optimistic than la senadora. The quality of our politicians is, I don't think is so good, you know. I think that they don't understand partially. But maybe they understand, but they are afraid, they are scared about the decentralization. It's the first time that the humanity is facing models, decentralized models. The humanity has been always organized in centralized models. For the first time, we have a technology that helps us to build models, society models that are decentralized. And I think that that is the problem of our politicians, that they're seeing that and they have vertigo to that, okay, vertigo. And maybe the question for the inclusion for me is also the power of building communities. I think that we have an amazing technology that is blockchain and has a big power to build communities, and we need to use this power to build communities. And then that will help a lot in inclusion models and solve problems that are facing the humanity.
So if there was one place to start, what would be the first thing that each of you would ask from the government, would have the government, your government do to help build the blockchain and the usage and the inclusion, etc.?
Well, in my country, I am part of those who legislate, and I also have to be a teacher, an educator, and I have to be an ally of those who face such fears. And when I say ally, I mean I have to make sure that we do away with such digital fear, to understand that this really isn't in the hands of a generation. There's a certain stigma of age. And some people don't see it in any other way than an age gap. Well, first of all, that. I would do it within the legislative power. But I have to say I have been a person who nowadays is reaching out to say we have to open the digital door. Without a regulation, without a legal framework that makes it possible to go towards these technological and financial alternatives, we're not going to be able to make headway as a country. So my proposal is to make sure that financial inclusion and education are a human right for every Mexican citizen. And my proposal is to have a first Bitcoin law to make sure that that door is open, because this is what we have to do nowadays in Mexico. We have to make sure that we understand that if we don't do this, we're going to be left behind. And technology is unforgiving. Who adapts to technology will progress. Who doesn't, dies. And this is radical. It's radical. And this is maybe, I'd say, one of the first decisions of humanity that's really radical. And we are right now at a historical crossroads. And the idea, of course, is to make headway, go advance, and close those inequality gaps. So for me, it's very important to say to my colleagues, the other politicians, that there are things that they thought were unimportant, and nowadays not only are these things important, they are urgent. They are urgent. The state, the government cannot still punish and put barriers to a technological community which is generating alternatives, creative, innovative alternatives already, proposing a different way to think through inclusion. And I'm sure with that we would be more prosperous and have a life of dignity.
The first thing would be having the openness that we are starting to have in Mexico, and that I have the fortune to have in other countries and with other central banks, and having the will to understand what is this. Go beyond the only seeing that, yeah, it's money laundering, it's bad, it's giving away power, etc. No, having the openness and the will of being impartial and starting with that. The other thing is doing good regulations, not only with government, but with the participation of companies, individuals, communities, and for everyone. Like you're regulating something that you have no idea about, that you don't participate, that you only know or read about it, but you don't have, like, how are you going to learn to swim if you don't go into a pool? No, you need to be there, and you need to start having that. On the other side, Mexico was one of the first countries that had a fintech law, not only in Latin America, but in the world. And unfortunately, that went right now and is frozen. So more countries to push Bitcoin law, blockchain laws, fintech law, and for regulating and for avoiding those bad actors inside the space, but also bringing investment and industry into the country. What happens when a crypto company, blockchain company, fintech company from abroad comes to Latin America and establishes them, and they start hiring people from Mexico, Venezuela, Argentina? Well, that's life-changing for them. The wage that they are able to earn having those jobs from overseas are more than that they would earn a whole year, for example, in their local countries. And you also solve other problems, because in countries when you don't have access to international payments, financial services, and also you have political fights that are also making this harder, like for example Venezuela or Argentina, where you have all these rules and regulations that makes it really hard to move money overseas. Crypto is a great opportunity for them to get the money inside their countries that they would have no other way. If they try to do it with PayPal or in international transfer, it won't happen. Money won't get there. And this is also a solution not only to get better jobs, better opportunities, development, but also to being integrated to a worldwide financial service.
Yes. I think that as a representative of the technology, I asked our politicians in the 3 levels I told you of regulations that we have here, Europeans, Spanish, Catalans, that for us as technology, the most important thing now is to have clear regulations over the digital identity. I think in the moment that is solved the digital identity, we'll have explosion in our industry. Is the key question to evolve the blockchain. A moment that that is clear and solved, we'll see, and I'm optimistic, I think that in this year, or maybe the next year, we'll see that solved in Europe at least, and that will help a lot the blockchain to make a real explosion.
I think we have time for one last question. Democracy is something that is much discussed lately, and I see a lot of excellent examples of democracy happening on blockchain. Do you all think that blockchain can play a role in helping to promote and secure democracy for people?
Well, the answer clearly is yes. There are alternatives being generated, and you may have seen it. Monopolies, at least in Latin America, in Mexico, have destroyed the idea that democracy is healthy. And we continue to believe, we continue to hold on to our culture, to that party that had the economy and the power. And, well, we really don't want those changes to happen. I mean, we have it in Mexican history and the history of Latin America. We always have, you know, the messiahs, those huge political parties that end up concentrating power. And that's why I insist, blockchain, the system, it's part and parcel of an avenue that we have to go to. to make sure that power doesn't keep on being concentrated in the hands of few. Because what we have nowadays, not only in Mexico, but in many countries in the world, is a concentration of power in the hands of only a few that is harming our ability to understand what the new consensus and agreements are as a civilization for us to go forward in a different manner. And technology, indeed, can generate that value to be able to attain a much more democratic future.
So normally when we think about government and public administration, we think about politicians, political parties, because they have the monopoly of having the funds and having the decision making. But we are seeing, for example, in this space, what is happening with DAOs. And actually a DAO can evolve to completely run governments and to completely run proxies and corporate decisions. So if you want to do it for your company and avoid like all these systems that have been working for 20, 100 years, and some of them are very obsolete, or having no decision in what is going on with the budget of your country, this is a great way to participate and to vote and have a transparent, open, and real-time results that we don't see right now in any democracy. And even in financial systems, even the most advanced stock exchanges cannot give you the transparency and the information in real time that you're having right now in blockchain since the beginning of many of these systems. So it is important not only for having transparency and participation, but also to have a decision, because at the end of the day, the money of the government, the money of public administration is money from all of us through taxes, in which we should have voting and decision on it. And for me, it's a great way to evolve and to have all these transparent solutions in which you can put in your mobile or any place for you to participate and really be a part of decision making and government.
Yes. We, in the center of blockchain in Catalonia, we firmly believe on the possibility and the power of this technology for better democracies. This year, we will run in November the 4th edition of an event that is Democracy for All, and it's an event dedicated to the democracy and blockchain. You are all invited to come or to see online. And we think firmly that there is the power of changing the democracies of these technologies is wonderful, and I am also very optimistic that that will happen.
Excellent. Well, listen, I would like to thank you all very much. It's really terrific conversation. Let us hope that many more government officials are listening so that we can enact some of these wonderful proposals. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.